Hey guys, Quantum here, and in this video I wanted to cover something a little bit different. For those of you that don't know, I do try to make it out to my local league play every week, and on Saturday, or today, January 20th, we had a competitive WIN-A-TROVE tournament run by a store called the Game Chamber Inc. So just first and foremost, shout outs to this fantastic organization. These guys are a terrifically run store, great management, very knowledgeable. Just to give you guys some context, like this store, when the game first came out, they held back product and sold it to league players at MSRP in order to ensure that product was getting into players' hands at a fair price. So that's just the kind of philosophy that they follow. So fantastic store. So again, first and foremost, shout outs to them. But it was a $10 entry. We had 16 people. There were more people there that were just kind of there for league and didn't end up entering. They were just playing casually. But our meta is fairly competitive and we have some really good players. And so I just wanted to break down kind of our top 8. And you can see me here in 5th place, unfortunately, with a 3-1 record though, so tied kind of 2 through 5, but obviously tiebreakers make or break the placing, and just kind of cover like what the meta is like. And so it's very interesting to see how diverse it is at a local level, because online you might see like a lot of Ruby Amethyst, but you might not see that locally. So in 1st place, we had an Amber Steel Song take the win. They went 4-0, playing, I'm not sure who they played in these first 2 rounds, but I know that in round 3 they played an Emerald Steel Discard, and in round 4 they ended up playing an aggro evasive Ruby Emerald deck. So Amber Steel Song has decent matchups into both of these. So, they ended up clutching out a 4-0 victory, which is, again, shout outs to them. They are a good player. They absolutely deserve. So congratulations to the winner there. In 2nd place, we had an Emerald Steel Discard. So again, losing round 3 to that Amber Steel player, and then winning round 4 against a Ruby Amethyst, which is what's supposed to happen. Emerald Steel Discard is supposed to absolutely decimate Ruby Amethyst. Then in 3rd place, we had that Ruby Emerald kind of budget deck the guy was mentioning, evasive aggro deck with I think a small discard package as well. So again, shout outs to them. Went 3-0 and then played the finals and lost to Steel Song, which again, aggro and discard. Steel Song deals with both of those fairly well. They have all of the songs that help deal direct damage to evasive threats, so that's usually not an issue for them. And then they can always mitigate the discard with a whole new world. So shout outs to them. And then 3rd place, we had somebody playing Amber Ruby Mufasa. So they were able to go 3-1, losing to the discard player, which is understandable, because when you think about it, the Amber Ruby Mufasa deck has no actions, and so as soon as a discard player drops that Lucifer, they're automatically discarding 2 cards, and then if you bippity boppity boo it, which I think this player said that it did happen to them, they're discarding 4 cards because they don't play any actions, right? So it's really, really hard to come back from that, considering that Mufasa is kind of just like, I just turbo out as much as I can, and then it kind of loses steam a little bit if they can't start looping things with like Snow White, Hades, and the Mufasa, I guess, technically, right, to get value off of the play. Then you had myself. I was on Sapphire Steel, and I lost my first round to Ruby Amethyst, unfortunately. So shout outs to Clotter. He's a decent player for sure, a really good player. But what did happen to me, it's not an excuse. I 100% deserve to lose. I probably could have played the deck better. But I remember game 1, I had a decent hand, but when I mulliganed away, like I think it was 3 or something, I drew into a 2nd whole new world. And then by like turn 4, I Hiram'd into 2 more whole new worlds, and I drew all 4 of my whole new worlds. And I was like, oh my god, and I didn't have a fishbone quill yet. And so I even went first that first game. But drawing all 4 of your whole new worlds within the first 4 turns really set me behind. And once Ruby Amethyst gets to 14-15 lore, which I've mentioned many times, I'm like, man, it's just a matter of them just dropping a few goat cycles and it's game, and I can't deal with their threats fast enough. And this player in game 1, I wheeled away one of their Be Prepareds, and they drew into 2 more off of the first wheel. And so that's always a risky run. You can't complain about it. That's how the deck goes. That's how the game goes. So again, not an excuse, but if anything, it's a learning point for me to just just sometimes I have to cut my losses, and if I just need to whole new world and just get rid of the 3, I just need to do that instead of trying to ink them into the inkwell. Not sure what I really could have done better there, but I did learn something, which I'll go over in just a bit when we review my deck list, on how you probably want to play play Sapphire Steel. And again, this is from real world experience. Then I'm not sure what these other players were on. I think 021XX. Yeah, I played this player last. It was another Ruby Amethyst player. I was able to win game 1 on the draw because I had a much better curve where I was able to kind of reset tempo with a whole new world. And then from there, this player actually game 1, the reason why it went so long, because we ended up going to time, was they actually played all 4 of their Be Prepareds on me. And I almost decked out game 1. I think I had like 5 cards left in my deck. But after their 4th Be Prepared, I was actually able to still set up a fairly wide board because I was trying to play around Tremaines and Maleficent Dragon, which is, I'm like, this is the only other removal they could have. I had removal for like their Ursulas and stuff like that, and I was able to clutch out game 1. Then game 2, I think I was on the path to winning, but unfortunately time was called. And like they were basically down to like 1 card, and I wasn't going to use Whole New World, so I already had the Hiram engine and Beast and everything online, so I was just drawing a bunch of cards. And that's what's really nice about this deck in Sapphire Steel, is that it has multiple ways to play around with the different engines that you run, and we're going to cover that in just a second. And then the 8th spot was the person that I lost to in round 1. So congratulations to Calvin there, making top 8, but they were on Ruby Amethyst as well. Now, the difference between these two guys is that this person was on Spellbook, and the Spellbook definitely clutched out the win against me. I wouldn't say clutched out, but it definitely helped accelerate their win against me and put me on a timer. Despite me being on Steel and running Benja, which we're going to cover in just a second, the issue is I need to find the Benja, right? And unfortunately, in both of my games, I think I found it in game 1, but it was too late, and then game 2, I just didn't see it. And this player was not on Spellbook. But against this player, I actually saw my Benjas, but it didn't matter. Yeah, that's how that went. And then John T is actually one of the managers at the store. So they played Green Fossa, Emerald, Amber. So you can see like they're all competitive decks in like the top 8 basically. And this deck, to be fair, it has a really bad matchup against Sapphire Steel. I think John T is a pretty good player from when I played him. He was doing some really interesting stuff with like the Pain and Panic and the Queen. And he actually has his own YouTube channel, which is fairly popular. It is the Inkwell. So shout outs to him as well for being a player in the meta. But the second half of this video, I want to cover my Sapphire Steel list here. So this, again, went 3-1 at my locals, losing to Ruby Amethyst because, you know, sometimes there's nothing you can do. The deck is just too strong, right? But in my list, I'm opting to run 3 Jafar and 3 Prince Eric. I think this is a decent ratio. The Jafar, while it is useful because you want to put it in there for like the aggro evasives, the Minnie Mouse, you have to be aware that this card does lose to Teeth and Ambitions. And so I remember when I was playing my final round, turn 3, I drew the Jafar, and they had a Minnie Mouse already on board because they went first for game 2, right? Because they lost game 1. And I was like, they had a Minnie Mouse, a small Minnie Mouse, like a 1-drop, and they also had the Mini Evasive. And they had like, I think 3 cards in hand, but they inked a Teeth and Ambitions earlier on. And I'm like, I could take the risk and play the Jafar on turn 3, or I can just play it safe and play Fishbone Quill and ramp to 5 and get out my Beast. The issue is they would be on like 6 or 7 lore by that point, and I just couldn't out their board. And I'm like, do I take the risk and drop the Jafar? Because if they have Teeth and Ambitions, they teeth their small mini, get rid of my Jafar, and they quest with the Minnie Mouse. Now I have to wait another whole 2 turns before I can deal with that Minnie Mouse, right? Assuming that I'd have to like either draw into a smash or like get set up my Beast combo, Whole New World, and hope to draw into something to remove the Minnie Mouse. And so it's just really difficult to make that decision. But that's how Ruby Amethyst can sometimes deal with these kind of decks, is that if they just have the Teeth and Ambitions, the 2 toughness on the Jafar or the Cruella can make all the difference. Prince Eric was a little underwhelming for me. And maybe it was a bad meta call for my locals. Online, it's obviously pretty good. It deals with a lot. It stops a lot as well. But just locally, I just didn't really find myself using it all that much, and it wasn't really that favorable. So I might consider tailoring this deck a little bit to the local scene that I encounter. The Mickey Mouse was a total dud. I would cut this from the deck. So Haymaker's list ran 2 of this, and the reason why is because on turn 3, you either need to see a Fishbone Quill or a Mickey Mouse, and so Mickey Mouse is basically just another way to ramp through turn 4 so that you can drop Beast Tragic Hero on turn 4, so a 5-drop on turn 4, or Cogsworth, so that you can set up for the turn 5 Sing of Whole New World or Grab Your Swords. But in hindsight, I always found myself just wanting to drop either a Tinkerbell, which I have teched into my deck at a copy of 3, or Fishbone Quill. And so this never saw play. I always inked it via the Fishbone Quill, or just wheeled it away because there were just better things to play on turn 3. Speaking of which, I would probably cut the 1 of Mickey and put in a 3rd Benja for that reason. While 2 is nice, as I've come to learn, is that you need to see it. You absolutely need to see it in order for it to be effective. And so just upping that ratio to 3, it's always ink if you're not running into an item deck. Like I drew this against Janti, who was on the Mufasa Emerald Amber, and they weren't running lanterns, so I just inked it. I saw this during their match and I just kept inking it. I saw this against the Ruby Amethyst player in the final round in both my games, and they weren't playing Spellbook, and I just inked it. I think actually game 1 I played it out just as a 2-quester, so it still has some utility even if you don't use it for the item banish, and so for that reason I would probably up the Benja to 3. And then this leads me to my other choice. So different from Haymaker's list, I have opted to put back in the Tiny Tinkerbell. There's a lot of reasons for this, because when you think about it, the goal that Mickey or Fishbone Quill tries to accomplish is you want to get that ramp on turn 3, so that on turn 4 you have 5 ink to play the Beast or the Cogsworth. That way on turn 5 you can actually sing the Whole New World to grab your swords, right? And so similar to that concept of I need to play a Singer 5 by turn 4, the Tiny Tinkerbell on turn 3 or the Fishbone on turn 3 can accomplish that. The Fishbone is a little bit more consistent because you can have Beast or Grandfather Clock, whereas with the Tinkerbell, if you drop this on turn 3, you need to have the big Tink shift in order to drop it on top of the Tiny Tink. But this has much more utility, as we know from set 1, than just being a Singer, right? You can drop this Tink on the shift. It gives you a good 4/5 body that you can, when it drops, deals 1 damage to the whole board. And then if you swing into something, you deal 2 more damage to something else. The shift into the Tink, 1 damage across the board, plus a Sung Grab Your Swords is 3 damage across the board, which by turn 4, if you shift this out and Sing Grab Your Swords, is effectively a board wipe because nothing really has more than 4 toughness at turn 4 anyways. So it's kind of like a pseudo Be Prepared, but obviously it's like a 3-card combo, so you can't always rely on that happening. But we know how devastating the shift 4 Tink can be, and this actually accomplishes the same thing that you want to accomplish with Fishbone Quill and or Mickey ramp on turn 3, because on turn 4 you're getting out the Singer, and then you actually have to wait another turn for turn 5 to sing, so the shifted Tink can get you the Sung Grab Your Swords on turn 4 or the Whole New World if you want. And so on turn 3, seeing the Tinkerbell, if I had another big Tink in hand, or a Fishbone Quill, was my optimal turn 3 play, and it worked out very well for me in the tournament, aside from the first match that I played where I drew the 4 Whole New Worlds and I was like, well, not much I can do here, unfortunately. And then I only run 3 Bell. I think Haymaker's list ran 4, and while Belle is a fantastic closer, she is very vulnerable. So against Ruby Amethyst, Maleficent Dragons, Be Prepared, even Lady Tremaine's forcing you to choose if you don't have a wide board, which is hard to do against Ruby Amethyst because, again, you have to be wary of the Be Prepared. I only opted to run 3. I only really wanted to see this late game after my opponent's hand was kind of cut down a bit. I've run through a number of their threats, and I can kind of count, okay, what are the odds that they have, the Maleficent Dragon or the Be Prepared. There was a game in game 1 against my final opponent in Ruby Amethyst where they played all 4 Be Prepareds, and I had 5 cards left in my deck, but I drew my final 2 Bells out of those remaining 7 cards. By the time I drew the 2 Bells, I had 5 cards left. And then when I dropped both of the Bells, I had a Cogsworth, a Hades, and maybe a Prince Eric or something on board. And I had 13 lore, and they had an Ursula on board with 11 lore, and I think a small mini. So they could have quested for 4, got to 15, and they couldn't loop Goat fast enough. Even if they did have Goat, Mim, in order to win the game. So I was like, even if they have a Maleficent Dragon, I have Cogsworth, Hades, Eric, which is 5 lore, and then 2 Bells with 15 ink because I had 5 cards left in my deck, which is another 10 lore. So they can't possibly out everything because they only had 12 ink or something. So even if they had Maleficent Dragon, they couldn't follow up with the Tremaine. And so in the end game, Belle is really a stabilizer if you know that you can play around to Be Prepared if you're going against Ruby Amethyst. And in any other matchup, it's just an insane card to drop if you know your opponent can't deal with it, especially with the Cogsworth giving it resist +1. If you go up against a Steel Mirror, Belle being at 5 toughness effectively makes it really resilient against any other matchup that isn't Ruby. I mean, technically it could still suffer against Sapphire with Hades and Let It Goes, but it is a threat that demands an answer in the late game, and for that reason, it can slow your opponent down as well, and it is a fantastic closer. And again, you don't want to see this early game because it's just ink, and so 3 to me is a good ratio. Only 3 Hiram. You play 8 items and 4 Popsicle and 4 Fishbone. Don't need to explain those. But Hiram I found at 3 to be great. There were some times where I was hoping to draw into one, especially after I wheeled and dumped my hand kind of fast. You would hope to see one of them. It sucks seeing 2 of these early in the game. You definitely want to ideally have one for the late game. And so sometimes it's even worth mulliganing one away, which is crazy to say if you already have like your ideal curve with like Fishbone and a 5-drop. That's really all you need. You'd rather draw into the Hiram off of a whole new world after you've advantaged into it and established tempo. It can be really good to just outdraw your opponent from there. And then 2 Nick Wild, because you can't play more than 4 Popsicle. I originally did not play this in my list, but after some testing online, I realized that, you know, Hiram was starving for items if he did end up surviving and questing a few times. And so just having the Nick, which is also a 2-quester, so it's not bad, in order to revive Popsicles and just get additional value. Like when you get this combo off, it is absolutely insane, and you just have so many resources to work with. Usually by that point, you should be winning the game. And then 4 Cogsworth, I was considering dropping this to 3, but given that it is a fundamental part of the engine, being the 5-drop that you sing with, I think you do need to stick to 4. Same with Beast Tragic Hero. Nothing to say about this card. Right now, it is probably the best legendary in the game. It's definitely the most expensive one now, overtaking Maleficent Dragon and Rapunzel, and rightfully so. However, keep in mind that this card will only get worse over time because it's insane right now because there are very few like direct damage dealing cards. Like there's Teeth and Ambitions on Ruby, and obviously Steel has a bunch. But aside from that, like you're going to be, you know, as other colors or other inks get direct damage cards, this card becomes worse, right? So over time, this card will definitely go down in value. But right now, it's obviously insane. So whenever I got a Beast Tragic Hero on board, like the advantage was just mind-boggling at the local level. It was pretty insane. And then, of course, 4 Tinkerbell Giant Fairy and 4 Hades. Again, I wanted to cut Hades to 3, but this being one of your top-end threats and one of your only ways to deal with big bodies like Ursula and stuff, it's definitely critical to play 4, I think. And there were definitely times where this came in super clutch, getting like I think against Jaunty, and I can apologize, Jaunty, if you watch this video, but, you know, Mufasa, Hades, your Mufasa, or Let It Go, your Mufasa, means that it doesn't resolve because it doesn't get banished, it goes to the Inkwell. And with the Mufasa deck, which you can see is the video I have linked to this deck list, it really does suffer against Sapphire in particular because you are able to out the Mufasa that way. This deck relies very heavily on the Mufasa resolving in order to maintain tempo, and if you disrupt that, it can be absolutely devastating. So, Jaunty, if you watch this video, this was a really bad matchup for you, so don't feel bad that you lost because, yeah, smashing your queen so that you don't get the benefit off of like pumping up the pain, so that it can quest for 3 and stuff like that. Like, it's a really tough match to win. I know I couldn't win it, that's for sure. So, and you actually put up a really good game 1. And then, again, speaking of Smash, I opted to run 4 because I wanted to be able to deal with, like I said, the Mufasa decks, the Docks, the Pains, or not Pain, yeah, Pain, which is the 2/3, the Queens, the Mini Surfers, the Mim cards, both Snake and Fox. Like Smash, to me, right now is in a really good place in the meta. That will change in set 3 when we get locations because Smash only deals damage to characters, and we have a new song coming, the Zeus song, that costs 4 and is uninkable, that deals 5 damage to character or location. But for right now, this inkable Smash was definitely a really good choice at 4 in my opinion. And then I also teched in 2 Strength of the Raging Fire. And the reason for this is because I wanted to be able to have a more versatile answer to aggro. And it also helps against the Steel decks when they drop Beast Tragic Hero. Even if I can ping it for 1 and stop their draw, it was really useful for that as well. 2 Let It Goes, I kind of wish I could have played 3 just because I do like having that removal. And drawing this early, it's just ink, which means, unfortunately, I don't have it for the end game where I do need to probably play it in out threats. And at that point, you're just relying on Hades. So having more Let It Goes is probably beneficial. But again, ramping your opponent isn't the greatest. But you know, 2 just feels right because you don't want to see it early game. You definitely don't want to ramp your opponent too early. This is significant for like Let It Going, the big threats, like I said, like the Mufasas, the Rays, the Ursulas, the Elsas, the Maleficent Dragons, like things that are big threats that quest for a lot. When at the point in the game where even if you ramp them an extra ink, it doesn't matter because they're already on 12 ink anyways. They're already on 2 or 3 cards in hand. We're kind of in top deck mode. So they're only playing a couple things at a turn anyways. But playing this on like turn 5 or something, giving them that ramp so they can get to like their Ursula 1 turn early is definitely not what you want to be doing. And so playing it at 2 makes sense. And then, of course, 4 Whole New World and 4 Grab Your Swords. Again, this was run at 3 originally, but I opted to up it to 4 to complement the Tink build or the Tink package in my build. And then 4 Popsicle and 4 Fishbone Quill. So that was my deck list. And again, it performed fairly well. Could I have won? I don't know. Like I said, there's some really good players at my locals, and they definitely give you a good run for your money. So shout outs to our local scene and all of the players. You guys are definitely going to be really competitive, I'm sure, when it comes to the official play, when we see those promos and stuff being competed for. But that was my local tournament on the WIN-A-TROVE, unfortunately, with a 3-1 record. But, you know, there's always next time. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this locals breakdown. And let me know if this is interesting to you and if you would be more interested in seeing this more often. I might get an in real life setup to record some real life gameplay. I know somebody, which I will probably do a collaboration with, is doing that as well, to see like actual physical card gameplay. Let me know in the comment section below if you've made it this far in the video, if you would like to see that. But that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for this video. Thank you again if you made it this far. Quantum is out.